Hello, everyone. On today's IRS tax refund update, we'll take a look at the latest developments with those ongoing tax refund delays, including the newest update just released by the IRS on the remaining backlog of unprocessed tax returns. We'll also recap the next round of tax refunds scheduled for release this week, and some new development for those e-filers who've had their refunds issued by the IRS, now to see them being sent back by TPG. Also, a new timeline that is not looking too good. Then we'll take a look at some of the top refund delay reasons and tax transfer codes you may be seeing. Starting off with the remaining backlog of unprocessed tax returns, as the IRS has released its latest update and only a slight decrease from last week's update, with now 2.3 million unprocessed returns remaining. Most of the movement we saw were from paper returns, which now are at 774,000 left, and e-file returns and those requiring special processing, including many of our viewers, remain at 1.6 million still unprocessed. At this point, it is very likely that processing will continue till the end of the year. Turning to those of you waiting on amended returns, as the backlog remains at 1.29 million still unprocessed. We saw slight decreases over the month of June and into July, with the IRS still averaging 7 months to process those amended returns. Also, do note the IRS continues to receive amended returns. So, for those of you who've recently filed an amended return, keep in mind the million plus returns that are ahead of you in line at this point, and that you could expect to wait possibly to December. Moving on to those tax refunds, as the next batch of direct deposit refunds is scheduled to be released and transmitted to banks by the IRS on July 26th. For those that are part of this batch, do allow up until July 31st to post to your bank account before initiating a payment trace. For those of you waiting on paper checks, the IRS will be printing out and mailing out the next batch of those on July 28th. While most will receive those within 7 to 10 days, you must wait a full 30 days before initiating a payment trace if you've not received it. Now, if you've been regularly watching this channel within the last several weeks, you will notice our ongoing coverage of those who e-filed their returns, who use companies like TurboTax and TaxSlayer, who've had their returns processed and refunds issued, only to have the company that processes those refunds, TPG, which works for companies like TurboTax, hold certain refunds under review before sending them back to the IRS to be issued out as a paper check, instead causing even further delays. Well, now some unfortunate news to report is the company TPG is now telling impacted taxpayers they're only sending these refunds back to the IRS once a month in batches, and that it could take up to 4 weeks for it to be sent back to the IRS. Now, do note, once the IRS receives it back, it will take them 4 to 6 weeks to reissue that refund as a paper check, which all in all means, because of this new delay, some taxpayers can now be waiting an additional 2 months, if not more, to receive that refund. It should be noted that the IRS is not the one requesting these refunds back. TPG stated several weeks back that it was in fact the IRS, but we reported that was unlikely, and eventually TPG came out with a statement later on stating it was themselves sending those refunds back. It also is not tax preparing software like TurboTax and TaxSlayer doing this. So you are not likely to receive a resolution by calling them. Simply put, as a result of TPG, you will have to wait even longer for that refund. Moving on to those tax transfer codes that are commonly being reported, starting off with the 570 and 971 codes. We're seeing these two codes come up the most in comment sections of our videos, and it is something that is expected to be seen when an issue arises. However, if you see these codes, you will fall into one of two categories. The 570 and 971 codes display the same date on the tax transcript. That means the IRS has autocorrected the issue themselves, probably resulting in a refund adjustment, and that the refund itself has been cleared to be released. Now, if these codes have two separate dates, that means the IRS continues to work on the issue, and the letter being sent out by the IRS as indicated by the 971 code may give further insight on the issue, including requesting for documentation. Now, we do say it may give further insight because there are cases that will simply be a 60-day notice from the IRS indicating they need more time to process a tax return, but no further information will be provided within the letter detailing the exact reason for the delay. Some of the more serious codes are the 420 and 424 codes that may appear on your tax transcript. The 424 code is the less serious of the code and indicates the IRS has identified a potential issue with the return and further examination is required, whereas the 420 code indicates an audit, and it's more than likely the IRS will request documentation, especially if you're claiming credits like EITC or the fuel tax credit. Once the IRS completes the audit, you will see a 421 code appear on the tax transcript. Now, we're still getting questions about the fuel tax credit. Still no updates to report for those who are attempting to claim the credit and are waiting on a refund. The IRS is thoroughly examining each return claiming this credit and may request documentation such as receipts and specific documentation on how the fuel was used for business purposes. As a reminder, you will not be able to e-file your return if you're using Form 4136, claiming the fuel tax credit